So here is the line of stitches that we cast on in the last video, and you can see how it looks from the other side. And as always, when you finish one row and you're ready to start on the next row, you have to transfer it to the other hand, and now you're working on the other side. Now when you first start knitting, you want to make sure you're not grabbing the cut end, because you're going to run out of yarn really fast. So we're going to bring these stitches close to the edge, because we're going to be transferring the stitches from one needle to the next. And I'm also going to change needles, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I cast on with size 13 needles, and now I'm going to knit with size 11 needles, and I'll talk about that a little later. But anyway, so when you start knitting, you're going to insert the second needle from front to back through that loop. So see, both of them are in the same loop space. So you're going to insert from front to back, and then you're going to bring the yarn around the back and between those two needles, like this. Then you use your second needle to pull that loop through, and we're going to take the loop from the first row off of the left-hand needle. Okay, so we're going to do that again. So insert the needle front to back, bring the yarn around the back and between the two needles, and then use the second needle to pull that loop through. Okay, so insert front to back, bring the yarn around the back and between the needles, and bring it through. So I'm going to knit all of these 11 stitches. So insert front to back, bring the yarn around and between, pull the loop through, and take it off the other needle. And again, my hands are very relaxed. I'm not pulling tight at all. I just want everything to be more or less snug and not tight. I'm not pulling hard enough to stretch out the yarn. Okay, so this is called knitting. Insert the needle front to back, yarn between, and pull it through. Okay, and here's our last one. Okay, so when we get to the end of the row, again we have to turn the knitting around, hold it in the left hand, and again I'm going to go to my size 11 needles. And you can see that the loops, because we inserted the needle front to back, the loops are all falling on the same side. And when we start knitting the next row, the loops are going to fall to the back here. So I'm going to start doing that. Again, bring the knitting up close to the point, insert the needle, bring it around, and bring the loop through. Oops, lose that. Bring it around and bring the loop through. Okay, so now I've got my second row, and you can see that now I've got the row of loops going to the other side. The first row of loops went to the back side, and then because I turned the knitting around, the second row goes to the front side. So I have a sample of that where I knitted several rows, and this is actually called the garter stitch, and that's where you just knit. You don't do any other type of stitch. You don't do what's called purling. I'll talk about purling in the next video. But you can see that you've got one row of stitches where the loops go to the front, and then the next row of stitches, the loops go to the back. And so it alternates where the row of loops go, and you get a similar texture on both sides, and this is called the garter stitch. So next time we'll talk about purling.